they felt was the worship of God. So that's what we're looking for.
Go ahead, Phil.
Okay, verse 21, the vile person. Verse 22 talks about a flood.
Yes.
Can you comment on the overwhelming forces, the flood?
Middle of the week.
Yeah, I tend to think that the flood that's going to sweep them away is going to be a kind of a perhaps a middle of the week event. That this may what is going to be the working out of this particular vile person's activity, but he's going to end up running roughshod over the Prince of the Covenant. He's going to end up running roughshod over this over the kingdom.
You think this is then kind of just a
preview,
an indication, a preview of how he's going to come like a flood?
Yes.
It's talking about when he will trod underfoot for 42 months. This is talking about when the sudden invasion of the 10 kings and the desolation of Jerusalem starts.
And where it says in Daniel 9, the end shall come like a flood. Would
Exactly.
that fit in here?
You got it. Daniel 9:26 is our key here. The flood is the desolations of Jerusalem. So really,
Not water.
no, it's not water. It's
Right.
a flood of armies.
It's
So-
the flood of Revelation 12, correct?
So 21 introduces the Antichrist. Verse 22 kind of takes a leap ahead and gives you a preview or a snapshot picture of what's going to be more developed and given more detail in verse 31. But from verse 23 to verse 30, you have a consecutive chronological order of events.
That's what
And
we're working through.
and that is the first half of the week. And that's what Travis is going to take us through verse by verse.
I have a question. Would the peace treaty with Israel, would it, a part of it be where they recognize Israel as a state? Because
What I think the difficulty is with the Arab world, everything to do is that they don't mind if there are some Jews there. They do not want Israel having statehood. Why? Statehood means they have certain rights at a UN or throughout the world. They have a statehood. What they want is to somehow usurp that away. If they can get rid of their statehood in some way, or make it dysfunctional. I think that's what I think they're
Well,
at.
can I ask this? Is a peace treaty and making firm a covenant the same thing? I mean, everybody talks about a peace treaty.
The piece that I guess I would be thinking that's going to somehow work in is I don't think that because they have to be dwelling in a safe place, according to Ezekiel 38, that have you come
Dwelling
to a
securely.
land of unwalled villages. I mean, this is going to be a place where they're not... Israel, I think, has somewhat let down their guards. I was having a very good conversation last night with Mark, and somebody had brought out the question of whether or not we think that, when Antichrist actually does come down to take the land, everybody's thinking that because Israel has nuclear weapons, they're going to be deploying all of this nuclear, and whoever, the 10 kings coming against them. But it's, the Antichrist has got to come into a temple. Jerusalem still has to be intact. There still has to be some things. So I'm saying that they are perhaps lax in their guard in some way, that they have let down. They are more at a state of rest than perhaps they have been. And maybe that's because there are some guarantees of peace from larger nations who have...
The overwhelming scourge shall not come upon us.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Isaiah
It's not gonna
28.
touch us.
It's not going to touch us because something is holding them at bay.
I personally think it's going to have something to do with the land and Israel's right to the land.
Yeah.
The boss now is saying we will never recognize their rights to a state.
As a state,
Israel
yeah.
as a state. And
That's
the
got to
only thing
change.
that is going to allow them to let their guard down is when somebody says that yes, indeed, they do have covenant rights to that land.
Right.
And this is confirming that covenant.
That's exactly what we're saying.
He may be lying the whole time he says it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's going to have, those words are going to have, something like that's going to have to come
That's
out.
right, Paul. They are confirming what God calls holy. They personally, it even says they hate the covenant.
Yeah.
Right.
And they have secret intelligence, conspiracy against the covenant, but they can't do anything about it.
Right.
But they're enjoying a peace that's apparently, the Antichrist is supporting, but his heart is against it.
Yeah.
And he's plotting,
It's a
planning.
covenant with death and hell.
On the one side, it's a holy covenant because they're confirming Israel's right to the land, which for God is, I gave them that land.
Yeah.
It's not theirs, it's mine, really. But on the other side, because they're trusting in flesh, it's a covenant with death and hell.
Yeah.
One of the doctrines of
Mark.
Islam is that it's okay to deceive
That's right.
for the sake of what we
Yes.
learned yesterday, the deen, the realization of Allah. It's a tenet, it's a doctrine, it's a part of what they do. That's how that's going to work.
They even use words like covenant. A covenant with your enemy until you have an opportunity. That's not in the Quran, but that's in their writings that interpret the Quran. So,
Laura had a question.
In Scripture, is 70 years considered generation?
I was just looking at, before we started here, I was going to start off by reading Psalm chapter 90, where God says that he gives you 70 years by reason, maybe 80. And I was going to say, teach us to number our days. But then Reggie jumped up, spoiled all that. Oh man, I don't know what I'm going to do. But no, I'm just, I think that's, I don't know whether 70 years might, somewhere right in there.
Well, with what Reggie was saying, with that's most
both are probably true. Both are probably true. There's a long 70-year generation. And when the Jews, I just read it in the Temple Institute, it just came in my email box. Some of you guys get that. They say that they've only been in the land 6 generations. How are they recognized? 70 years per generation. So the Jew has an understanding of a long generation. I just don't think that's all that scripture means. If you go back into the chapter before, he's dealing with a continuum of a hostile disposition towards God. So there's an interchangeable way that word is used.
So eat whole grain. And you'll live longer. If we keep going, verse 25, 11:25. And
Now 23, did we identify?
after the league is made with him.
Now my translation says, after an alliance is made. Is this the agreement?
I think it is.
Yes.
I think it is. Same thing.
I think that's a key, by the way. Verse 9:27 of Daniel, 9:27, is being fulfilled here in verse 23 of 11. So if Daniel 9:27 is the start of the 7 years, we're seeing here in verse 23 the beginning of the 7 years. And we're starting to see the earmarks by which we can recognize it.
But he's going to act deceitfully. For he shall come up and become strong with a small number of people. He shall enter peaceably even into the richest places of the province, and he shall do what his fathers have not done, nor his forefathers. He shall disperse among them the plunder, spoil, and riches, and he shall devise his plans against the strongholds, but only for a time. Now what I'm about to tell you, you can take 50 cents and a cup of coffee, but it's just something for you to think about. This really, honestly, is my own personal opinion, okay? This is not...
And which verse are you commenting on?
I'm commenting on 24. I think that it's a very good possibility that what was lost in, 67, the Golan Heights, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip, and you have ever since then a serious problem that has kind of erupted into what we're looking for now. I mean, the Palestinians have gained a foothold in the country, and they have been literally tried to take over Jordan, were kicked out of there, tried to take over Lebanon, kicked out of there, they were exiled to Tunis, and then they came back in, eventually were given Gaza. And so I think that possibly it could be that what is he trying to do here? But he's entering peaceably into the richest places of the province. When Arafat cut the, was trying to get his concessions and for Israel to recognize them as an actual entity, what happened was, he wanted a piece of Jerusalem, and he wanted a foot in the West Bank. And that's exactly what they're doing now. They want more. They want more, and they're not going to stop until they get more. It's eventually, they're just trying to shrink it down. So I am not putting that out there dogmatically for you, but I think that it could be possible that maybe he is the spoil, the plunder, and the riches, the strongholds. I personally think that that could be something like that. That's what he wants. He's going to come in, I mean, and take what Israel, took from them.
And this will be after the agreement, correct?
Yes. I think this actually points a little bit to the future. I think this is what's in his heart. He's looking. He enters peaceably. Hey, we're here by right. You have made a covenant with us, and we're here. And we're just going to keep pushing, just like they do, and keep pushing. And eventually, that pushing may get him in some sort of a trouble, because in Daniel 11:25, the next verse, it says, "He shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south with a great army. And the king of the south shall be stirred up to battle with a very great and mighty army, but he shall not stand, for they shall devise plans against him. Yet those who eat of the portions of his delicacies shall destroy him. His army shall be swept away, and many shall fall down slain. Both these kings' hearts shall be bent on evil, and they shall speak lies at the same table, but it shall not prosper, for the end shall be at the appointed time." Now here's what that just says, is that somewhere right in here you've got your peace covenant. What this is saying is that there's going to be a northern king who takes and he comes down and he has a conflict of sorts with a southern king, and he wins in some sort of a regional skirmish. And then what happens is that he's going to go back up. It says, verse 28, while returning to his own land. So he's going to go back up. He's making, he's coming back up. What does he do?
Travis, can I make one comment? Because this agreement has been made, he's able to pass through the land, really, without going through the Israeli part.
Yeah, Israel's approval.
I've even got on my little thing here that I think this may be, in 1128, we have some sort of a violation. We have some sort of a violation of some sort against the peace covenant. Perhaps attempts are made at a land grab, or maybe they're saying our army's tied up here, while returning from warring. Maybe they destroy a settlement. Maybe they misuse the land of Israel in some way, because it says in verse 28, while returning to his land with great riches, his heart shall be moved against the holy covenant, so that he shall do damage and return to his own land. So it's quite possible that maybe they destroyed something in the land of Israel, or he's misused something, and he's while on his way back, because he's thinking, hey,
maybe stirring up some trouble, some murders, maybe some conflict,
full of
minor conflicts.
Yeah, nothing that's going to destabilize the covenant, but something that I think he's probably feeling his oats.
He has just had success, military success, against some king who is also a substantial power to his south. And these two kings get together at one table. So the southern king, the one that has been conquered, comes to a table to have talks with the one who won, the conqueror. And they have a common interest. What do you suppose that might be? They hate the covenant. They conspire against it, but it's not time. So their plans come to nothing. And so now he's moving back towards his power base. And as he's doing that, his heart is plotting and planning. Probably there's conspiracy. Probably there's under the table talks. It's not alerted Israel yet, but it's becoming uncomfortable. And we're going to see in a minute, there's some entity called the ships of Chittim. I think we should look long and hard at that for reasons that we'll get to. But the ships of Chittim check his advance. They intercept it. It's not clear that there's actually been blows or a battle. All that's clear is that he's grieved in his heart that his plans are not successful yet. So he returns back to his power base, to his homeland, and he has secret intelligence with others, and we believe those others are the 10 kings who share a mutual hatred with him of this covenant. They're intolerable of this covenant.
Can I ask one more question? This prince of the covenant that's mentioned in verse 22, are we talking Antichrist here, or are we talking another figure? Can you comment on that?
Well, the scripture says in 22 that the Antichrist is overflown or conquered. He's overcome. The prince of the covenant is overcome by the Antichrist.
Some sort of a broker.
Right. There's a couple of theories on this.
Maybe a peacemaker, somebody that's involved in
these
negotiations.
It could be the one who architected or put this together, kind of like a Kissinger type figure. That's a possibility. Some have suggested, with good reason, and I don't know which, but I've heard 3 really good explanations. The other, besides a peace broker like a Kissinger type figure, is someone like this could be the officiating high priest over the new sacrifice. In fact, this is what the Jews think was the ancient fulfillment of this, was when Onias III was killed in antiquity. But the other possibility is this could be a heavenly prince, a warfare in the heavens. That was the third. So we don't know. We don't know. But whoever the prince of the covenant is, he is not the Antichrist. That we do know. Why? Because he comes down. The Antichrist overcomes. Whether in the heavens or on the earth, I don't know. But he is overflown by the Antichrist. So is this somebody who has made the peace and they're in the land of Israel when the land of Israel is invaded? Or is it some priestly or some Messiah figure? That's an open question. We're just throwing this out, you know.
Verse 29 says, "At the appointed time he shall return and go toward the south." So I think you've got another southward move here. "But it shall not be like the former or the latter." And here's where it gets into it. He's going to make another attempt. He doesn't go all the way down to the south, but the northern king makes another attempt. And then you have the ships that are in the Mediterranean. Cyprus, Kittim, Chittim, whatever you want to call them. These ships out here somehow check his power, his ability to make that southern move, which is exactly what you see happening all the time when we sit out there and throw Tomahawk missiles off in the Persian Gulf or something. And the effects of that, I think, are kind of interesting, because I don't think, it's taken us 10 years. It's taken the United States, the greatest military power in the earth today, it's taken us 10 years to conquer one country in the Middle East and to try to get a stable government. Let's take 10 kings. Let's take 10 kings. Let's add another small king that's going to come up with them, and then let's put some sort of a price on what we're seeing coming up here, which is going to be the purchase or somehow the securing of military power from the Soviet Union, Russia, northern Gog and Magog. That is going to be something that causes these ships, hold it, we don't want to get into World War III here, so let's stop. And keep reading a little bit in verse 30. "For the ships from Cyprus shall come against him, therefore he shall be grieved, and return in rage against the holy covenant, and do damage. So he shall return, and show regard for those who forsake the holy covenant. And forces shall be mustered by him, and they shall defile the sanctuary fortress, and they shall take away the daily sacrifices, and place there the abomination of desolation." So just real quickly, 11:21, installment of a flattering vile person into a ruling position. Daniel 11:23, that vile person confirms a covenant made with Israel for some sort of peace, and it has to deal with issues of temple lands and construction. 11:25, there's got to be a regional conflict of sorts. A northern aggressive king moves down and has a skirmish or regional war of some sort with a southern king, and he prevails. Then, at Daniel 11:28, violation of some sort against that peace covenant, perhaps something to do with a settlement or misuse of land or something. Daniel 11:29, the northern king goes to make another southward move, but Daniel 11:30, those Mediterranean naval military presence attempt to contain and stabilize that region. and they put him in check. But he withdraws. Now, another interesting aspect that we have to kind of look at right in this is that we believe in an antichrist. You know, we believe that Satan, there's going to be a little horn, and he's going to be an angry little guy. But what he's going to do is he's nothing compared to what he's going to become, because he gets killed. And when he gets killed, he actually, I mean, this is kind of a...
Where are we getting that from?
The mortal wound.
Yeah, the
Revelation.
mortal wound of Revelation chapter
Revelation.
13,
And the
chapter
The
17.
descent into the abyss.
Yeah, and yes, sir.
I hope I'm not confused, but the mortal wound, would that be the mortal wound, would that be the first part of the week?
Well, what I'm suggesting is that we're in this particular aspect right here, we're like right here. We are on the edge. There's certain things that we have to be able to identify very, very close to the end here, because somehow, maybe he gets killed. This stuff's raining in on where he's at, and he somehow gets killed, and he's miraculously raised from the dead, and he goes back and he has intelligence with those who hate the Holy Covenant. Arms stand on his part, and he comes down and takes the temple. I mean, somewhere right in there, in a very short window, this guy's got to die and be resurrected. And he's not just resurrected as a man resurrected. He is completely divested of the image of God. And what happens is Satan enters him and completely animates his body. This is Satan walking around in flesh. This is evil. This is the epitome of evil. So we're talking right here at the end. This is very close. So all the world is supposed to see this according to Revelation chapter 13. They will watch it and marvel. And you talk about having a national revival amongst the Muslim world.
Travis, one other question about the ships of Kittim. Some translations say ships of the western coastlands,
Right.
which some say that could include ships even from the west, possibly even the United States.
Yeah.
It's certainly much more than Cyprus. Even the Jews thought that Kittim or Chittim was the Romans, because all the maritime powers, the naval powers of the whole north and western Mediterranean coastland was considered Chittim. So this is a Western alliance. For example, some of you will remember back at the time of the Yom Kippur War, when Israel had the 6th Army of Egypt surrounded in the Sinai, Leonid Brezhnev, the then head of the Soviet Union, was going to send a rescue mission. President Nixon had our 6th Fleet in the Mediterranean, and he said, don't try it. And we had what was called brinkmanship. There was a standoff. We think something very much like this is what's in view here.
Yeah.
That the Western Alliance, now notice, brothers, where this is in the timeline. We're very close to the middle of the week. Why? Because verse 31 marks the middle of the week.
Right.
So we're very close to the end of the 3.5 years. Now watch this. Some power of such a substantial kind, something so formidable, is going to be in that Mediterranean, sufficient at this late point. This is almost 3.5 years after the covenant's been confirmed, after the peace. At this late point, this man's being turned back. Mm-hmm. The man who in just one verse later is going to prevail. No one can make war with him. He's going to have military supremacy. Very important. Who is this ships of Chittim? If it's not the United States, it's certainly a Western alliance. And in today's world, it would be definitely the United States, along with perhaps NATO.